Technology is constantly transforming us. People are more empowered, connected and augmented than ever before, and they're mobile. At 2.5 billion, gamers represent the largest affiliated cohort globally. We've reached the next digital frontier. Across industries, the growth of 11 frontier technologies represents significant economic opportunity that could be worth $3.2 trillion by 2025. The Metaverse is the next level convergence of our physical and digital lives, and of business, education, health, entertainment, and creativity. All enabled by developments in connectivity, augmented reality, virtual reality, and blockchain technologies. But the future is unevenly distributed. 3 billion people remain offline without access to online education, employment, or opportunity to innovate and create business. Progress for some, unfortunately, leads to inequality for others. Digital inclusion, with a goal of a connected world for all, is one of the greatest opportunities of the next decade.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Annelies Kjaer, data futurist and founder, Kjaer Global.
A great good morning to everyone, and what an excellent start to the day, despite all of the bad news. I'm happy to be here on this particular panel, looking into the Metaverse and future infrastructure to benefit humanity. Now, we have collected a lot of data to basically underpin some of the greatest trends in the frontier technology, those technologies that are transforming humanity, business, and the world as we know it. The digital transition was already happening at pace, but then the pandemic drastically accelerated that. And in 1 month, internet traffic alone jumped by almost 40%. And today, when you ask people, 61% of them say that their livelihood now depends on technology. However, our global technology narrative is full of paradoxes. Global trust in technology is at an all-time low. 68% of people believe that big tech have too much power and influence on the economy. So I would say that more than ever, we need to foster technological innovation to meet the challenges of our time. But tech companies must engage in calls for digital inclusion, and as we heard this morning, stronger regulation. Further decline in trust could have detrimental impact on both innovation and the wider society. And some of the questions that we hear people asking are, how will our jobs and livelihood be affected by the digital transformation? Does big tech have too much power and control? And who is building the future? And what kind of future are they building? So I would suggest today that the big tech questions that we will hear from the panel will be very much about how do we build inclusive technology that feels human rather than an algorithm. We hear many people saying, show me the human in the machine. The other big question is, how can we reverse a negative perception of big tech and start building trust when we go into the next century or into 2030? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Annalise Kjaer. She's our data futurist, and she'll be with us back 2 more times in this session. I'm Edie Lush, and I'll be your host for this session. Welcome to the Metaverse, infrastructure for citizens of digital worlds. Just think about one of those data points that Annalise mentioned there. 61% of people globally thinks that their livelihood depends on technology. And the metaverse will only accelerate that dependence. If you're still wondering what the metaverse is, Mark Zuckerberg describes it as the internet that you're inside of rather than just looking at. And our session today is going to look at the frontier technologies that can enable us to build that inclusive technological future. AI, robotics, Internet of Things, quantum, cryptocurrency, and blockchain. All the infrastructure of the future. Now, they can enable us to build that inclusive future, but will they? Or will this be a repeat of the early promises, the promises of the early internet, followed by disappointments? And maybe it's on all of us to decide. So, with me first, absolutely delighted to have CEO of BNY Mellon, Todd Gibbons. Welcome.
Thank you. Very good to be here. It's great to see so many familiar faces after a couple of years of doing it all in virtually, yes.
So in the past few weeks, Todd, we've seen headlines absolutely dominated by Facebook's announcements on massive investments building the metaverse. Some of these announcements say as many as 10,000 new jobs could be created exclusively for the development of the metaverse. You'll know this really well. That's a decent-sized company on its own, right? So tell me about this pivotal moment in tech and digital development.
Well, you know, I'm not so much sure it's a pivot as much as it is an acceleration. I mean, a pivot kind of infers that there is a change in direction. I just think there's a change in speed. And I think the adoption of technology, I think one thing that we've certainly learned through the pandemic is it's not only the millennials and the generations that have followed them that have been so quick to adopt technology, they've actually brought my generation into it. And in our own services, we've seen the adoption of our digital platforms at a rate that we had never seen before. And I think that's consistent across the financial services industry. You know that is something that we've seen. And I think that will continue to accelerate. And I think the technology spend that comes along with that is going as well. In the financial services industry, we may be at a pivotal point when it comes to regulation, and I think that may be a sense at big tech as well. So if you think about some of the innovations, and you can question are we where we were in 2000 with the internet, but ultimately look how powerful the internet became. So I think these technologies that are developing, and maybe they'll have some stops and starts. But I think we are at an interesting point, and I think regulators are actually challenged when you think about things like cryptocurrencies or stable coins or central bank digital currencies or even digitizing assets, and I think you're going to hear about that at the conference this morning, which will be quite interesting. Digitizing assets and even decentralized finance. It provides a huge challenge to the regulators around the globe in the financial world. I mean, you're trying to obviously protect the industry from bad actors. You're trying to protect consumers when it comes to types of investments that might need to be made, while trying to maintain innovation at the same time. But I do think what you're going to see is, and I appreciate you bringing it, 10,000 employees may sound like a lot, but right now we're all becoming technology firms, and we're all hiring and quite aggressively going for that talent. So I think it's another challenge that we face, is just having our education system produce the talent that we're going to need in data science and computer science. So I think things are happening quickly, and I'll share one instance of how we connected with the metaverse. We built an application for college savings. In the U.S., they call these 529 plans, and they're tax-advantaged college savings plans. You set them up for your children, and you put cash in it as it grows. It grows tax-free, and the proceeds can be invested into your kids' educations. We connected with the social media, so we built a product, very, very efficient means, a very low cost robo-advisory that went along with it. But we also connected to the metaverse and to social networks. And so if it was the child's birthday, you can put out on the social networks, it's our child's birthday, would you rather gift into his education fund, which is a lot more efficient than buying some, less valuable toy, and that's become. I think those types of connectivity, we're going to be so integrated, it's going to be hard to differentiate it. But I think the general statement is things are accelerating fast. There could be pivots, but it's going to be as much as how the government deals with it as how we deal with it.
BNY Mellon is a global, systemically important financial institution, and it plays a critical role supporting global capital flows and financial infrastructure. So how do you think about that and engage with the tech and digital change that we see in the headlines now?
Well, we're the oldest bank in the United States. We're proud of that. 237 years ago, we were founded by the first Secretary of the Treasury of the United States, Alexander Hamilton. And interestingly, we recognize, I think as most do, that building, first of all, we're becoming an intensely technology firm, especially given what we do. We're platforms for custody, we're platforms for wealth tech, investment and asset management, around the globe. We are the world's largest custodian. But we realize we aren't going to have all of the technology and build all of the technology ourselves. In fact, we are embracing fintechs. Across the world. We have dozens upon dozens of investments that we've made in various fintechs. Those investments are done for strategic purposes. We certainly hope that they'll work out financially, but we didn't invest in them solely for financial purposes, unless there were some piece of technology that was going to help us do our job better. We think there is a very interesting future, for example, of custody. And it will be far more interconnected. It gets right back to our theme of interconnectivity with the metaverse. And we're investing in fintechs that can help us along the way. For example, we are committed to custodizing cryptocurrency. There's enough institutional interest in it. It's behaving very much like an investment, like a security, and both institutional as well as retail interest in it. And we think that the industry needs a trusted counterparty because there is a lot of counterparty risk associated, and we can play that role. But we've invested in fintechs to advance the technology, which is very complex, to do it safely.
So what role do you see BNY Mellon and other financial institutions playing in the future that's defined by these new frontier technologies?
Yeah, for ourselves, again, we see ourselves as a platform business. We are intensely technology-driven. Our technology spend is going up at probably 3 to 4 times the rest of our spending. We're going to spend somewhere in the vicinity of $3 to $3.5 billion on technology, this year. But as a platform business, we see ourselves more as an orchestrator. So we're in the middle of it. We're connecting to multiple parties, and just like investment, we think it's very important to be open architected. We're not going to always be best in class at everything. We need to be able to connect to the best in class services, and that's what our platform is intended to do. And that's why we're excited to be part of the FII. We're a sponsor, and also very excited to participate in the Kingdom's vision through 2030.
Thank you. So if you're the orchestra, you might be the conductor of the orchestra.
I wish that was the case, but I don't think people would listen to it.
Thank you so much, Todd, for setting that context of how important these new frontier technologies are. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Great to be with you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
So we're going to bring in now somebody who is actually building a metaverse. Please do welcome NEOM's tech and digital holding, Mansoor Hanif. Welcome. How are you? So we've dipped our toe into the metaverse, but now we're going to dive in fully. The next session is called the Metaverse, a training camp for robots of the future. So NEOM NEOM Tech and Digital Holding are building what you call cognitive cities and cognitive solutions. First of all, you have to tell me what cognitive cities and cognitive solutions are, and then where does the metaverse fit into that?
Great, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me, and some great questions already to start with. So, why do we need cognitive cities? And I think if we're honest with ourselves, we have to admit that smart cities are simply not smart enough today. They're not really giving us what we need. And they're sucking up a lot of data, but I don't think any of us really know where is that data going and how is it being used. Is it being used for our benefit or against our benefit? And also, we're not seeing those benefits, actually. I mean, most of the smart, even the most advanced smart cities, you have to enter your data here, there, everywhere. And that's really because the systems are not talking to each other. So this is why we need cognitive cities. And cognitive really means understanding. And what we really need is cities that understand you as a person and adapt to your needs, but also that you can understand the city. What data does it need from you? How is it collecting that data? What benefits is that data giving to you? And that you can give your consent. So that's why we're building cognitive cities in NEOM. And then the second question is, how do you build cognitive cities? And the good news is you've mentioned most of the technologies that are here today. That's great news. So the technology is there. And in NEOM, we are converging those technologies, and we're powering the engine that's going to power those cognitive cities. And that's a lot of 5G. There's the cognitive compute. There's the digital air that Joseph spoke about yesterday. There's also the operating system, NEOS. All of that is happening now. But then we realized that these are the technologies, the same technologies that will power real-time, incredibly immersive experiences, which is what the metaverse is all about. And then we thought about this, and we realized, you know, cities of the future shouldn't be about bigger and better. We don't believe the future is megacities, where the individual feels lost. It should be about meta-cities, focused on your experience. Today, it's only physical, but in the future, it should be digital and physical, so mixed realities. And so we're bringing the metaverse to the city to make it real for everybody. So it's not about sitting on your couch with a VR headset making you dizzy. It's about actually living in designing a mixed reality world. So then we asked ourselves, well, how do you plan for cognitive cities? How do you plan for mixed reality cities? How do you ideate? How do you plan? How do you provision those digital experiences in the real world? And then how do you monetize them? Obviously, we need a business model. And we realized there is no platform that does that today. So, of course, the only conclusion is that we have to build one. Now, of course, we're not presumptuous enough to say we're going to build it on our own. So we've started speaking to the best partners around the world already. And we've named this, the code name is Xverse. And the first pilots will be run in Q2 of next year in NEOM.
So there's many companies talking about metaverses, Facebook, Epic Games, Atari, in fact. How is the NEOM metaverse going to be different from that?
Well, those are some big names. So let me start by saying that most metaverses today are either replicating existing cities, so copying real worlds, or building on existing user bases, such as Facebook is doing, or they're designing completely imaginary cities in the gaming world. But what we are doing is we are actually very privileged to be in NEOM, where you've heard about the line, for example. That's the first thing we've announced. But everything in NEOM is being designed around an incredibly iconic architecture of cities. So it's already a kind of an incredible universe that you want to start to live in before it's even built. So we have that iconic architecture, and what we can do in NEOM is actually imagine the city. We can then live in the city immersively through the metaverse while we build it, and then take all of the digital content and assets and overlay over the physical assets when they're built. So having a real mixed reality city. There is no other metaverse that can do that because it's quite unique. And then just going back to what I said earlier, I mean, it's all about the cognitive technology that can power real-time digital twins. What that means is that in the real world, when something happens, in the digital world, that's immediately replicated all around the world. That's not easy to do. So it's a huge technical challenge, but we have the cognitive tech to do that. Plus, on the business side, all of that is built on a digital asset platform. So every single transaction, whether it's NFTs or any other type of digital movement, will be monetized. So there's a great business model underneath it. And at the same time, we are creating these digital human transitions that are totally unique because we have the physical and the mixed world. We call this physical breakout, which means that you can actually, from anywhere in the world, transmit yourself, teleport to NEOM, and interact with people either as an AR avatar, as a hologram, or as a robot, which is why, also because of the fact that we're building an autonomous city, we are investing heavily in robotics, and we're the only metaverse to integrate robotics into the metaverse.
So that's really interesting. What's the link between the metaverse and robotics?
Yeah, great question. So actually, we have a big ambition around robotics per se, and we want to drive the future of human-machine interaction and completely change it. And we expect to have over 10% of the population in NEOM by 2030 to be humanoid robots, living freely with the humanoid humans. And that's not easy to do, and it's quite dangerous today. So there's a lot of work to be done on technology to make it so that 10,000 robots can freely interact with human beings. For example, here today, it's not possible today. So when we started working with the robotics companies, we understood how they work today and how the future of robotics is going to be absolutely through the metaverse. So first you start with the robotic brain, which is software, and a software body. So they're using kind of gaming systems today, but they're moving now towards the metaverses. So you train the software brain with a software body before you take the same software brain and put it in a hardware body. The brain is the same. So the hardware brain of the future is what we'll build in the cognitive city, the compute platform. But these software brains need to be trained to, first of all, interact with objects. And this is where the metaverse comes in. But it needs to be a physical metaverse. It needs to be a metaverse that mimics the physical world with laws of physics. For example, gravity. So when a robot picks up a ball and throws it in the air, when it goes to the real world with a real body, it needs to react the same way. Otherwise, there's no use in training it in something that's not there. So it's the physics engine in the metaverse that's really critical. And that's really interesting in terms of space exploration, for example, where we know that robots will play a huge role. You can have, for example, a gravity switch, where you can simply, on the metaverse, have gravity set to Earth. Then you can train the robot for the moon and change the gravity, and then for Mars and change it again. So there's incredible possibilities there. So the other key thing is interaction with humans. And that is absolutely critical, because today it's not safe to release robots with humans. And so initially people were using simulated humans in gaming systems to train the robots. So that's the first step. But now in the metaverse, because of these human avatars that are interacting with them, they're real humans as avatars. So that's already the second training step before you finally release them to be free with real humans.
Wow, I could go on about this all day. So you spoke about the Xverse. I can see how it can interest people who enjoy immersive gaming. I would like to teleport to NEOM, have a good time. But on a broader perspective, I might be happy with my life as it is. I might not think I need the metaverse. So if I'm a user of this metaverse in 5 or 10 years, how is my life going to be better?
Yeah, Greg, and I certainly hope you are happy. I wish everybody to be happy. That's part of the goal in life. But I think if we're all honest, happy is one thing, but are you satisfied with your life? I mean, how much time do you spend each day on useless crap or rubbish or things you don't need to do? What would you say?
Well, there's a lot of time. There's a lot of time spent doing things that I would rather not be doing, that's for sure.
Exactly, and that's the whole thing. So we can have better lives. And really what we expect, what we want to drive the metaverse to do, we're driving the metaverse through what we call digital humanism, with the human at the center. And what we want the metaverse to do is not eat up your digital life. We want it to give you more time, more space, and more safety to be human. And we also want the metaverse to better use resources to drive sustainability in the cities. And we think that it's going to be a lot of fun to create new experiences. And these new experiences are a journey of discovery for us as individuals and humans. So it's through experiences that we learn who we are, which is really one of the main goals in life, I think, for all of us, to know who we are before we know what we want to achieve. But also it can be make the world more inclusive and fair, because in the metaverse you can have whatever persona you want. And that will really break down barriers. And also I think, as long
as you have enough currency tokens to pay for how you look, how you appear.
Absolutely, but you can use your creativity and your imagination, which are the fundamental aspects of being human, to make money from NFTs and art and whatever you want to do, So you're your own master. The people around the world will be empowered by this. Plus, the fact is we're all suffering from carbon anxiety. Why? Because we don't know every time we pick up a bottle, every time we have something to eat or we take a taxi, we think we're destroying the world. So because we don't have visibility of what is the impact of our actions, and we don't have agency. So in the metaverse, we'll be able to give you visibility of your footprint, of your shadow, and then you make the decision about every action you take and the impact it has on the world and on the economy. And that way, you should make better decisions for the world and yourself, but you should also lower your level of anxiety. Okay. So basically, in essence, the metaverse should make humans feel more human and less of the machines we sometimes feel we are today.
Wow, Mansoor, thank you so much for spending time with me. You don't have to convince me. I'm already a fan of the metaverse. I read Neil Stephenson, huge fan of Ready Player One as well. So I really appreciate your time, and I'm ready to test out the metaverse whenever.
You're welcome. You're very welcome.
Thank you so much. Please thank very much from...
Thank you. Thank you.
So that was Mansoor Hanif speaking from NEOM, and I would very much like to now welcome an expert on quantum. Please do welcome the CEO of French technology company Thales, Patrice Caine. Greetings. Lovely. So it's great to see you in person rather than Metaverse, as I did in January when you were on a screen in front of me.
Indeed. It's far better like this.
It's much better. So the theme of this particular section is the great acceleration, investing in quantum technologies. So we hear a lot about it in the ether. For many people, I feel it's still a little bit science fiction, out there a bit. So is it premature to talk about these technologies if you're not a total technology expert?
No, I don't think it's premature. In fact, quantum technologies have already, I would say, happened, what is called the first quantum revolution. So without knowing, in fact, we are already using these technologies. Like when you use Google Maps or Waze, you need GPS positioning, and GPS use atomic clock to synchronize the satellites, and this is a direct consequence of quantum physics. Lasers that are very useful in surgery is another application of quantum physics, or hard disk in your computer. But this is what is called by the experts, and I'm not an expert, the first revolution, the first quantum revolution. What is about to happen now, and this is fascinating, is the second quantum revolution. And the main difference, it's not the laws of physics are the same, but the way we observe things at individual level, at a particle level, not at hundreds of thousands of particle level. And this will make a big difference in terms of applications.
So what type of applications are you talking about?
Well, experts foresee three main types of application to make it simple. First one is what is called quantum sensing or quantum sensors. So a sensor, what is a sensor? Well, any, I would say, instrument that measures something. A radar is a sensor. An inertial system is a sensor. MRI in medicine is a sensor. And the revolution will come from the fact that the accuracy of these sensors will be improved by 100 times, if not 1,000 times.
Wow.
So it's really a revolution. The second type of application is quantum communication. And again, to make it short, quantum communication will probably make impossible to be hacked. So you see, it's typically for people who care a lot about secrecy, it's a revolution. And the third one, this one is probably the most well-known by the public opinion, is quantum computing, where processing power will be fantastically improved as well, and you will be able to solve extremely complex mathematical problems that are not, I would say, cannot solve right now with HPC. And these problems, mathematical problems, are very useful when you try to optimize a complex system, like a grid in energy, like an air traffic management system for civil aviation authorities. So these quantum computers will be very, very useful as well.
So can you say more about how these applications are actually revolutionary rather than just incremental change?
Well, indeed. So I've taken 2 or 3 concrete examples to make it try to take something which is illustrative. The first one is in the aviation sector. When you take a flight from Paris to Riyadh, for instance, in any aircraft, you have inertial systems. So system that gives you your position in 3 dimensions. These inertial systems are accurate, but it derives during the flight and needs to be recalibrated with GPS. So the current accuracy for a 6 to 7 hour flight is around 1 kilometer, which means that when you land in Riyadh, you would miss the airport by 1 kilometer.
Right.
With the foreseen, I would say, initial system based on what is called cold atoms technology, the precision will be of 1 meter instead of 1 kilometer. So you would not need any GPS to recalibrate the system. And this is extremely useful when you cannot have access to GPS, typically for a submarine or for any, I would say, mobile objects under the sea or under the ground. A second application, this one may speak to people even more, in the medicine field and in the healthcare sector. When you use an MRI, in fact, you measure fluctuation of the electromagnetic emission of your body. And then, of course, very clever doctors interpret all these things to detect or not some disease. Tomorrow, we'll be able to detect things with an accuracy enhanced by 1,000. Again, this factor of 1,000 is a good proxy of the leapfrog of these quantum technologies, which means that you will be able to detect things that you cannot detect as of today. Disease that you just do not imagine, or even known disease that will be detected far in advance compared to what we can do today with the latest generation of MRI. So this is a concrete illustration of this revolution. And the third example is quantum communication. The fact that what is called entanglement between 2 particles allow to detect any kind of intrusion during a communication will make this communication impossible to be intercepted, to be hacked. So protecting, I would say, privacy or secret when you need to have secret communication.
Fascinating. So it seems like there's a global quantum race going on at the moment, and I wonder why this subject is so important for business leaders that we've got here today, for policymakers. Why should they invest right now in this technology?
I think it's very, I would say, strategic for both, for business leaders, because it will give to companies that will master these technologies clearly a technological edge, fantastic technological edge. It is as well very important probably for nations, for countries. Because we see in the different applications I've mentioned, these applications are extremely useful for the commercial world, but for defense and security application as well. So clearly, I would say governments are paying more and more attention to these developments. And last but not least, in terms of privacy, for our democracies, privacy has a huge importance. We see that with quantum computing, you will be able to decode any, I would say, encrypted data, thanks to this impressive computing power. Then it creates a kind of a challenge in terms of privacy. It's the opposite of the, I would say, good aspect of quantum computing. The opposite is that the fact that you would potentially lose the fact that for the moment, your data, your information may be kept secret or private. That's why regulation should come into play at one stage, and this is as well a question for governments and democracies.
So I wonder, we live in this digital world, but we also have the physical world with all the challenges that we've been speaking about, including climate change. So I wonder if quantum technologies can help address that as well.
Well, yes, quantum technologies may help, may contribute to climate change challenge. For instance, I've already said so, but we can come back on this just for a second. Many of natural resources are scarce resources. Hence, we need to optimize them as much as possible, not to waste these resources. It's true for electricity, for energy. It's true for fuel consumption by airplanes when you fly in the sky. So all these, I would say, use of natural energy needs to be optimized. And this optimization will be solved thanks to quantum computing. Because the latest generation of high HPC are not powerful enough to solve these underlying extremely complex mathematical problems.
Fascinating. Patrice, thank you so much for explaining this frontier technology.
I did my best.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
So speaking of disruptive technology, let's bring in another guest. We're going to be speaking later today about blockchain. We've already heard a little bit about crypto, but I want to remind you, as my next guest comes on, about one of the important data points we heard from our data futurist, Lise Kjaer. Global trust in technology is at an all-time low. And in fact, it isn't just technology. Trust in government, media is also low. So we're gonna have a look at what we think the blockchain might be doing about this. And very pleased to have you guys on stage today. Thanks very much for coming. I'll let you introduce yourself from the end. You've got a fantastic shirt on.
Why, thank you. Mike Novogratz, I'm the chairman and CEO of Galaxy. Love being here in the kingdom.
My name is Brad Garlinghouse. I'm the CEO of Ripple, and very good to be here.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Nicolas, Cary. I'm the co-founder and vice chairman of blockchain.com.
Great. So let's lay out the current landscape of blockchain technology. I want to know how it's being deployed and how deeply it's being integrated into the financial industry. Lots of conversations on the side of this conference about it, but I'd love to hear from you guys how you're seeing it. Starting just here.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think it's important to take a quick step and look back a little bit. Yesterday morning, we had sort of some titans from the traditional finance industry speak and opine about the future of finance, and it was pretty. It was a window into the past from my perspective. We've gotten really good at organizing molecules, and we put down a lot of infrastructure in the last century that was incredibly important for human advancement. We put down roads, we put down pipes, we built hospitals and built bridges. That was all incredibly necessary. But over the next decade and into the next century, we're going to need to get really good at organizing electrons. One of the most important things we can do is build a financial fabric for the world. Sorry, my mic is cutting in and out a little bit.
Yeah.
One of the most important things we can do is wrap the planet in an economic fabric that makes it possible for all people to participate in trading and exchanging wealth. And it needs to work as fast as the internet does so that we can build new businesses, exchange ideas, and coordinate capital. And Ray Dalio really hit it on the mark when he talked about the latent potential of human possibility. And if we unlock that, if a young man who's just living a mile away has an idea that he can build a better business for his community and he can source capital for that idea from anywhere, we're going to be on to some really incredible ideas from the rest of the world. And so the real vision for what's happening in the industry today is really to build a better financial system, one that's graphed into the internet that empowers all people to control their wealth. And there's some big ideas in there, but that's kind of where we are right now. And then we've got some great people on the panel today that can talk both about what's happening beyond just the extraordinary innovations in the design of money, but also how existing institutions can marry themselves up with this technology for all kinds of other benefits. So I'll pass it on to Brad, because I know his firm is doing a lot.
And while we pass it on to Brad, I might get somebody to come help you with your mic.
Thank
so
you.
Brad, you take it away.
Well, so I think your question is perfect, because I do think that some of the origins of blockchain and crypto were all about creating a separate, almost parallel financial system. And I think even as this panel and this structure has talked about the metaverse, I think about it really as the connective bridges. It's not about a separate financial system. It's how do we use these technologies to improve the existing financial system? Ripple has been focused on selling into financial institutions for 5-6 years. We have hundreds of institutions. Just yesterday, we announced the first corridor between the Middle East and the US dollar using digital assets to facilitate real-time money movements. We see this vision of a really enabling an internet of value. We talk about an internet of things, an internet of information that we live in today. And as Nick was introducing, I think that the future will enable the free flow of value in a way that truly is more inclusive and more democratizing to an economy that has fewer borders and includes more people.
We're already seeing that, right, in parts of the world. Lots of parts of the world are already using this technology.
For sure. I mean, I think one of the things, to my knowledge, this is the first time I have been to FII, and I think it's indicative of the trend line of crypto, that we have a panelist of 3 very senior people in the crypto industry on stage here. And the trend line overall is more people, more countries, more regulatory clarity, more countries understanding how these can be leveraged to actually benefit their economies. I think the origins of, hey, it's for illicit purposes has really started to move into the background.
So, Mike, where's the industry headed from here? What are the new players? Who are they going to emerge? And who's going to be the winners and losers?
Sure. Let me step back for 1 second. I started investing in Bitcoin and in crypto in 2012. And like many of you, I'm sure, wasn't a computer science major or even a technologist. And so I spent a lot of time trying to figure out why everyone was so excited. And if there's one thing to remember, what Satoshi Nakamoto with this white paper that was all about Bitcoin did, his contribution was he created the first digital signature you couldn't counterfeit. And that sounds simple, the first digital signature. Before that, you take your computer and you saw any digital image, you could copy, paste, and make 1,000 of them or 1,000,000 of them. And so what Satoshi did was he allowed Bitcoin to be unique, a Bitcoin to be unique. There are 21 million, you can't make any more. We know there's a unique digital signature. And that idea has spread from first digital money, which then transformed into digital gold, which is Bitcoin, to all kinds of things. And so the most exciting thing that happened this year, and I think everyone has to pay attention to, is things called NFTs. We saw digital art, digital collectibles show up, and all of a sudden there was a crazy surge. I've got to buy a crypto punk or a crypto ape or generative art, these amazing AI artists creating new art. And that woke the whole world up to realizing that, there are real use cases for blockchain. Before, people thought, oh, this was just the crypto guys playing with the crypto guys, right? But now, every major company in the world is looking at how do I use these tools, this crypto idea, this community, this idea of the scarcity to enhance my business. So Visa's a $500 billion company. They power more transactions than any other company. They went out and bought themselves a CryptoPunk. And when I asked the CEO of Visa why they bought a CryptoPunk, he said, hey, we want to send a message to the community that we want to be part of it, to this crypto community. They told me right now, on a normal day, every Visa cardholder uses it less than 1 time. And they think in 10 years, it'll be 10 times all the growth coming from buying digital goods, digital shirts, digital collectibles, digital art. And so for the first time since I've been in crypto, we see real companies, if they're sports teams, brands like Chanel, all saying, hey, I need to be part of this economy. And I think you're going to see it all over the place. With 100% certainty, I promise each and every one of you, in 10 years, your health records will be NFTs. And you'll finally go to the doctor, and you'll pull out your phone, which is your wallet, and you'll have your health records, and you'll be able to share them with the doctor, instead of having to call 16 different places. Anyway, so that's the excitement that the world woke up, and that's why crypto prices have gone up so much this year, right? You just had a huge year. If you were long crypto, you're feeling very good about it. A lot of it is because the world finally noticed there's a use case, and there are lots of them. But NFTs was really the wake-up call.
I want to respond a little bit to some of that, which is true. At blockchain.com, we've had over 80 million people sign up over the last decade. There's a cultural phenomena in art, in music, and in sport. There's a financial phenomena around how do we tool all of our systems to be more efficient and digitally native in the first place. And there's incredible innovation and investment happening in this industry, and it's recycling. We're learning lessons, and we're getting faster, better, and cheaper. And if we look at how technology, which is a true driver of history, has evolved over the past 100 years, it's pretty obvious, to me at least, that over the next decade, the internet will be the greatest contributor to GDP in the world. The time to invest in humanity and the time to invest in enabling technologies that bring wide-scale utility in the financial services industry is right now. And I can speak quickly for my firm. We've seen the fastest growth ever in the adoption of wallets. This is really important. Wallets are tools that enable you to passport into this future of new financial services. You can send, receive, secure, trade, and exchange digital forms of wealth. Sometimes those are cryptocurrencies, sometimes they're stablecoins. They allow you to remit money instantly, basically from Dubai to the Philippines or from the United States to El Salvador, which is a really interesting example this year. We now have a country that has adopted a digital currency as also part of their national currency's obligations. And so we expect to see more of these things going on, but it's a really incredible year for crypto, and we'd love to see more participation from everyone here.
Does it matter about the regulatory systems? Because that's one of the issues that people always bring up with this issue. I wonder what matters, and also who's doing it really well.
You know, I do think if you look back in time as a US citizen, one of the reasons why the United States led in the Internet of Information development is because there was regulatory clarity, regulatory certainty based on laws passed in the 90s. And what you're seeing now in blockchain and crypto, I think, is a similar dynamic where you have a category of countries that really have been on the leading edge of providing that clarity and certainty. So investors and entrepreneurs like you have on stage today can build companies with that clarity. Countries like the UK and Singapore and Switzerland and Japan and even the UAE have been really leaders in providing that regulatory certainty and that regulatory clarity. You're seeing more and more countries lean into that. Now, that isn't to say there are some countries, as I'm sure many here are aware, like China, that have taken a more negative view on occasion. But I think the long-term trend, as Mike was describing, you step back and think about over the last 6, 7, 8 years that all of us have been involved in this industry, you see a very positive trend line overall that I think is going to continue to grow globally because of the benefits to consumers, to the benefits of constituents that governments are representing, whether it's remittance costs in key corridors. It truly is the democratization of money, finance, allowing more people to come into the system.
Interesting. Did you want to follow up?
Sure. Listen, you know, any new industry that changes the world often creates a bubble, right? You had a railroad bubble, you had an internet bubble. It creates a bubble because the story becomes so clear to people that I got to be part of it. And when you have these manias, these surges of enthusiasm around something, you often get fringe players on the side that take advantage of that enthusiasm. And so it's regulators' job at times to police against that. And they're usually not great at it. But so they have a real role to stop the charlatans, to stop the bad actors. I would tell you the core of this movement, and most of the players aren't bad actors, and that we're not in a bubble yet. We had a little mini bubble in 2017. Now we're actually in a movement. And it's a movement that's gaining speed and legitimacy. And so the crypto community, the guys on stage and our brothers and sisters that are building these businesses, didn't do a good enough job, certainly in the United States, but everywhere, educating politicians, educating regulators. That's all changing. And so I'm confident that certainly in the US over the next 12 to 18 months, we get better regulation, more clarity. And I'm confident because crypto's really popular, right? There are over 200 million people on Earth that own part of a Bitcoin. There has never been a security, or not a security, there's never been an asset owned by more people at once. And so recently in the United States, the government tried to jam in to a piece of legislation some language that would be very bad for the crypto community. And over a weekend, the crypto world shut DC down with phone calls to senators, with emails. And it was the first time DC realized, oh my God, there's 60 million crypto voters in America. And so certainly in the Western democracies, the crypto voting...
What about in China? What about the recent actions of China?
Listen, China has a very different view on how they think the world should go, right? China's citizens are willing to give up a lot of their personal freedom for the collective good. And they have a president, President Xi, who went from a world where China was becoming more and more part of the global community to saying, I'm in charge. You can call him an emperor, you can call him what you want, but Xi has taken a very hard, fast view that his view of China should be the China that's going to happen. And so anything that threatens the Communist Party of China is bad right now. And they saw crypto, which is about freedom, which is about empowering individuals, which is about transparency, as really bad. If you want to be in charge of everything, you don't necessarily want so much transparency. And so for the rest of the world, you've got to decide what kind of society do you want to build. Do you want to build a society where freedom is important, or do you want to build a society where one guy owning all the power is important?
I want to give you guys one quick question. Give me your best example of blockchain or crypto for good. We've got 39 seconds.
Sure. So anyone that wants to speak about this or how institutions get involved, I'd love to chat with you afterwards. But how it's for good, anyone in the world right now can download a piece of software that can enable them to become financially sovereign. If you think about that for just a second, they can basically build financial capabilities in their pocket on their smartphone that gives them access to the same things that people in Canary Wharf or Wall Street or Singapore have, but anywhere on the planet, regardless of the circumstances of their birth. So if we want to unlock a lot of human latent potential, let's give them tools to build wealth.
The for good that I think about today, where Ripple has focused, is really on reducing the friction as measured in cost and speed of payments, particularly around cross-border. I think people forget that remittance costs, which really are for populations of immigrants that can least afford that, can be 600 or 700 basis points on average globally. And so the for good is, if we can bring that from 600 or 700 basis points and taking days and having lots of errors to taking seconds and costing 60 basis points, the for good, particularly for those segments of populations, is a lot of good.
Mike?
I would say that crypto started as a movement where a group of people say, we don't really trust the center. We don't trust these governments, big organizations, big banks anymore, right? It started from a breakdown of trust. And where it's for good is, it's a Gen Z and millennial revolution where they're building new systems of trust. Trust built with transparency. And so in a world that's balkanized like our world has, where politics are harder and harder, both in the US and globally, crypto is kind of a pan-political movement that's built around this concept of trust, and it's trust through transparency, and I think that's a spectacularly important idea.
Fascinating. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I want you to actually, when you're backstage, have a listen to this next section, because crypto and blockchain can play a really important in counterfeiting and counterfeit goods as well, and I know you know about that. I encourage you to follow up with Hans later. Thank you very much. Thank you. So let me remind you of one of the important data points that Lise, Kjaer pointed towards. Global trust in technology, all-time low. And it isn't just technology. Trust in government, media, institutions is low. But imagine if you can't even trust the products that you buy. Please now welcome a specialist on this subject, co-founder and CEO of OriginalAll, Hans Schwab. How are you? So, first of all, counterfeiting, illicit trade. Why are we talking about this in a discussion about the metaverse?
Well, I think first of all, we need to put things a little bit into perspective. New frontier technologies have been estimated to be an opportunity today of 350 billion, and that could be a little bit over 3 trillion in 2025. Well, counterfeiting is a 4 trillion problem today. And that's not taking into consideration the impact of pandemic. These numbers were actually estimated in 2016. So it could be tremendously higher. And what does it mean, a $4 trillion problem? First of all, to put it into comparison, it would be the GDP somewhere in between of Germany and Japan. It's also 2.5 times all of the defense budgets of the world combined. And what's the impact on that? Well, for example, in Western Africa, one of the most impacted areas of the world, 70% of all pharmaceutical products are counterfeit. We still today have over 100,000 deaths from fake malaria medicines,
Right.
despite all of the efforts of the Global Fund and other institutions, just from fake malaria in sub-Saharan Africa.
Why is there so much counterfeit?
Because we don't embrace the solution today. There are solutions, and we have miserably failed to address a physical problem that we have today that can be relatively easily solved with technology that we have today and that we cannot afford to import into the new digital worlds that we're creating, because we will only accelerate the problem beyond what it is already.
Well, let's talk about those solutions. We were just speaking about cryptocurrency, about blockchain. What's your message for them? Can those decentralized databases and crypto help?
First of all, the main message is build it into the architecture. It's anti-counterfeiting by design. In the same way we look at privacy and other issues that we architecture into our platforms from the onset. We need to do the same with counterfeiting. The technologies that exist today, for example, on pharmaceuticals, but on many other products, they are already on the product. We have just not made the effort to integrate it in a way so we can empower the people and law enforcement agencies to make the differentiation between a legitimate and a fake product. And when you look, and it's not an African problem, it's not a pharmaceutical problem, and it's certainly not a luxury problem. It affects everybody and everywhere, but in different proportions. Africa, which is a continent that we're working on right now, is among the most affected. I don't believe there is another area where countries have 70% of counterfeit medicines. But the WHO estimates that on a global scale, 10% of all pharmaceutical products are fake. So we need to act. We failed to act in the physical world. We still need to do that. There is a tremendous impact on humanity if we address a $4 trillion problem, which, by the way, directly finances criminal and terrorist activities and disruptive structures.
Well, we know
today
that
in the
North
world.
Korea, in fact, funds almost its entire economy on counterfeiting goods.
You're absolutely right, Edie. Korea is a good example. They even have cornered, it is called, well, sometimes Office or Division 39.
Right.
So they actually have their own structure to deal with the slush fund that is created with all the illicit activities that they do. And yes, they survive on it. But North Korea is by far not the only, may I call it, exporter of counterfeit goods. Many other countries are. I think they're obvious. And if we don't act, we have a problem. We call it an economic cancer in our hands that will have a devastating social and economic impact.
I'm so sorry that we don't have more time for this, Hans, but I really appreciate your time. You've given us a lot to chew on about how we don't want to import these issues from the physical world into the digital world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I wonder if before we get our next guest on, we might pass back to our data futurist, Lise Kjaer, to give us a little bit more context for this world in which we're living in.
Thank you very much. The world we are living in, or the world we will be living in. So let's talk a little bit about next generation transformative tech. When we look at the data, the Internet of Things market is set to rise to about $1.5 trillion in the next 10 years. And that means that it's been tripling its revenue over from now till 2030. Artificial intelligence, extended realities, they're just some of the technology that has the potential, both in near and long-term futures, to completely transform the world as we know it. The Metaverse, as we've heard, is a very, very exciting opportunity, and really this idea of the digital twins, as we heard, in order to really have those parallel worlds where we can test things and et cetera, et cetera. Now, over the next 5 years, we might even be spending more time in virtual worlds than we now do on the 2D internet. So really there is a lot happening. I was very inspired by the case study from NEOM. Now, the future is really coming faster than we think. AR, virtual reality, they could bring out on a net economic benefit of $1.5 trillion by 2030. And perhaps one day the metaverse will host entire virtual economies and societies and really have those currency we heard about, like NFTs. Some forecasts have even said that the influence over the metaverse will rival real-world political influences and communities, sort of a new world power online. So I think it's no wonder, as we also heard this morning, that investment interest in the metaverse is growing by the day. So really, as we can hear, as we see, frontier technology and humanity are on the agenda, and it's really about trust and transparency. Two of the questions that I really keep having in my head is, frontier technology are creating an abundance of digital jobs and services, but what elements are the most critical to building functional and human-centric ecosystems? As government, businesses, and individuals move to the cloud, how do we best shape a fair future, digital future for everyone? Thank you. Over to Edie.
So let's just reflect on one of those data points. Internet of Things forecast to rise to $1.5 trillion in 2030. Tripling its revenue in 10 years. That's just one frontier technology that investors are putting their money into. So let's discuss now future funds, scaling new technologies. Please welcome CEO, Softbank Investment Advisors, Rajeev Misra.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
How are you?
Very good. Thank you.
So we've explored a lot of future technology, building the metaverse, quantum, looked at blockchain. What specific technologies do you think are the most promising for the future of investment, for economic growth, and for social impact?
Well, you can't make long-term forecasts because the disruptors of today are getting disrupted every year. I mean, if you look back a few years, even companies we have invested in, like Uber or DoorDash, they're getting disrupted by new technologies. But the digital transformation and disruption got accelerated in 2020 with COVID, where human behavior changed, I believe, semi-permanently. But the major industries that are promising for the next 2-3 years, well, two, because you can't predict beyond that, are education.
Mm-hmm. Is that because of the pandemic, do you think?
Because of the pandemic, and that behavioral change will stay, where a kid in a small town in India or Africa can access education from MIT or Stanford, and that's happening, and that's accelerating. Life sciences, the fact that we're using genetic engineering and AI, we could come up with a vaccine in 6 or 7 months from two small companies, not the big pharma out of Germany and Oxford, shows you how all the investments in life sciences will accelerate to find cure for a lot of lifestyle diseases and vaccines for other diseases. Financial services, one of the biggest industries. It's not just banking, it's not just transferring money, it's insurance, it's asset management. All that will get disrupted and is getting disrupted. So far it's only payments, but it's lending and so on. And the last, and there is a long list, but the last to me is e-commerce itself. The way you go and shop now on Amazon or Shopify will change with social e-commerce, where great influencers like you will show up on apps, and depending on what you're wearing, I just click on your bag or your shoes, and I can buy instantly, where influencers can influence, and social e-commerce is going to be very big. So fascinating industries.
Really fascinating.
As you just spoke about trillions of dollars of
Yeah.
of GDP growth coming from digital transformation. It's a fascinating world we live in.
So where do you see the most exciting parts of the world? Where is this opportunity going to emerge from?
Yeah. The opportunity is global, but where is the value? Where is there lack of capital? Where has capital not reached where you can invest and get better returns? And if you went back 1 year even, 18 months, it was Europe, Latin America, because there's a lot of capital in the US chasing those opportunities. But Europe did not have that kind of opportunities. The number of unicorns created in Europe has grown 5-fold in the last 2 to 3 years. In Vision Fund 1, we had 5 investments in Europe out of 80. In Vision Fund 2, we have 50 out of 150. So it shows you Europe is growing, Latin America is growing. Again, there's lack of capital, there's lack of mentors, there's lack of ecosystem. So if you can go in as a large technology investor, put capital to work, help those companies grow, I think those two are exciting. And the Middle East. Third, we've invested locally in a company called Uniphonics. In the GCC is getting very exciting.
What about India?
India has had capital for a long time. I think it's a bit overheated as an investment. The valuations are
Healthy.
Are helping a lot, are high. So I mean, it's got 1.2 billion people. It's fascinating, but there is no lack of capital there. Like it was the case in Latin America, which is behind by a few years. It was the case in Europe, in Israel, in the GCC.
So given what you've just said and the fact that capital isn't scarce, how do you think this is changing how early, late-stage venture funds are expanding to better support founders and to scale businesses?
So, we disrupted the technology investing environment in 2017 with the Vision Fund, where in 17, 18, and 19, we were the only source of large capital, where a founder wanted $1 billion or $2 billion. There was only the Vision Fund. Now founders don't want that much capital because they think their valuations are going to go up, so they're going to take less capital and then raise again 6 months later or 1 year later. So capital is not a competitive weapon anymore. It's not a differentiator. You have to now go in, and the founder now will take capital from investment arms that provide more than capital, that provide an ecosystem. Softbank and the Vision Fund now has 300 investments. So that ecosystem, where if you invest in a SaaS company, if you invest in an education technology company, or what have you, provides business opportunities for that company. If you invest in automation anywhere, which does robotic process automation, just our 300 companies, 50 of them will provide business. And the other aspect that we have a 30-man team, which is called the operating group, which helps these companies grow and do business with our own ecosystem and also grow geographically, get into Japan, get into Saudi, get into the UAE. So helping them grow in different regions, helping them do business with our ecosystem. They don't need a lot of help in strategic direction and running their business. They're very good at that. What they need is helping them connect to the rest of the ecosystem.
So I want to ask some shorter questions, get into specifics. I'll save you some time because I imagine when you get cornered in parts of the conference, you might get asked about things like electric vehicles. What do you think?
Well, automobiles today are less hardware, more software, which is why Tesla is where it is. We have invested in a lot of autonomous companies, GM Cruise, Nuro, the Uber Autonomous, DD Autonomous, etc. So electric is not just electric. Electric is electric plus autonomous, which is what Tesla is. Tesla is valued where it is, not just because it's electric, but because it has the data, it has certain autonomous features. Of course, the aesthetics is great. So electric, I believe, it's not going to be a domain of a few companies. The existing Porsche has come out with a great electric vehicle. So is Mercedes coming out with it. So it's going to be a convergence of both electric, autonomous, and smart driving, which to avoid accidents, to help to assist the driver, and that's where the convergence is going to go. Of course, you know the basics about electric. You know, it's about battery life, cost of battery. The biggest cost in an electric car is the battery.
Right.
And as the costs come down of storage of power, and the life of the battery, and the span of the battery, that's what's going to accelerate electric vehicles.
What about crypto and blockchain? Where are you investing and where do you see the future there?
Well, you just heard from the experts before me. I was waiting in the back room. We have stayed away from coins because that to us...
Why is that?
That we can't quantify it. We can't put a mathematical model to it. But we believe cryptos and blockchain is here to stay. It is here to disrupt financial services, and it is doing that. It's here not to just disrupt financial services, but every walk of life where you could tokenize legal documents, you could tokenize your house registration, everything. And hence we are investing in infrastructure. And by infrastructure, I mean KYC, know your client. Infrastructure, I mean just processing power, etc. And we have invested in exchanges, FTX and others, where people will go in and trade their currencies. So we are not, I wouldn't say heavy investors, but we have started investing 4 months ago in the infrastructure of blockchain, not in the currencies itself. So we believe in crypto, but we're not that invested in, or we have stayed away from the currency, the coins.
Thank you so much. Love to keep you up here all day, but we'll let you get on with your day. Thank you so much for joining us here at FII 5. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll give one more time, a chance for you to hear from our data futurist, Kjaer. Give us some more data to contextualize this new world in which frontier technologies will take us into the metaverse. Lise.
Thank you very much. I think we've heard about many data. You've seen the little data slides up there. And behind me is more a visionary, I would say, outlook, maybe look to 2050. What if we look to shape our future in a very different way? A future where we all came together to create a digital constitution, a values-driven agenda. I believe that should be the forefront of all global leadership. A scenario where leaders will say, I don't just want to be the best in the world, I want to be the best for the world. Because that thinking is needed if we do end up with machine super intelligence surpassing that of human intelligence. And this is actually already happening as we speak. So we must ensure that those technologies being built on a foundation that are being built today is on a foundation of shared values, so we can all benefit from the advances that are there. So my suggestion as a futurist is, what if some of those people here in this room could be architects of the future, architects of the global digital constitution? What should it say? Over to you, Edie.
Thank you, Annalise. I just want to end on where we started, which was we want to build this inclusive future, and we don't want to repeat the promises of some of the failures that we saw from the early internet. And it really is on all of us to decide. So thank you very much to all of my panelists here today for helping us explore the metaverse, and thank you to the audience as well, the citizens of the metaverse. Thank you.